My line of the introduction, I have no idea what to say. That covered everything. Thank you for coming out this lovely, almost summer afternoon, sun and weather. Appreciate being here. Again, I love that you're in the papal caboose. That's great. Benediction. I'll just tell you a little bit about the background of my neighborhood, which is basically this book is the portrait and profile of a neighborhood during a certain time period. I grew up there. I was born in '74, but the 80s and 90s were my time period in Bensonhurst. So during that time, the reason I say that it's changed a lot, it's now actually an Asian or Chinese dominant neighborhood, and a lot of the Italian influence is starting to fade and just move to different areas. But when I was growing up there in the 80s and 90s, it was heavy mafia influence, a lot of street corner culture, which is still there, you know, the bodegas, the hanging out on the street corner or at the train station, drinking 40-ounce malt liquor, hanging out at the park at night when it was late and, you know, your parents didn't know where you were and you're just teenagers with all your buddies and friends, you know, trying to get away with stuff with the girls, maybe sometimes the guys. And my goal in that for about 20 years I was collecting notes and sketches. I was thinking back after having moved from Brooklyn. I lived in the city, but I've been in Taos. Now it's actually almost 12 years, or 11 and a half years. But all these character sketches, people that I knew, everybody had nicknames from, honestly, you know, Joey Douche to Johnny Jaw to Johnny Beggar, who used to say, you know, he had his license plate, and I'm going to put Beggar on the back of my license plate when I have this money and fuck everybody. And that was his thing. So everybody had their nickname, and the reason behind their nickname, I was Johnny Pips, because my friend had found my father's records, and he's looking through them, he's like, the Commodores, and there's it, Gladys Knight and the Pips, hey, you're Johnny Pips. From there on out, I was Johnny Pips. So nickname culture was a big part of it as well. And as I told Nancy Stapp the other day, this is my coarse and crooked Valentine to my neighborhood, to the rawness of it, the poetry, the pettiness, the misogyny, the beauty. I mean, all of it is kind of, I at times absolutely hated where I came from and couldn't wait to get out. And then after getting out, now there is an appreciation that came with some distance and a slight bit of maturity, and I don't want to overstate that. That being said, before each piece that I read, so it's 5 stories in a novella that all revolve around the neighborhood, but they are different characters. The main characters are pretty much always an incarnation of me, because I told my friend, I'm the anti-hero of my stories, always. So these are different versions of myself, people that I knew. And the first piece that I'll start with, and this is great because I don't see any really young people here. Some of the material is quite raw, so not all of it is, but I will just say that in advance. And so the first piece, The Bottom Feeders, is one of the longer stories that opens the book. And this is kind of the departure piece. There's home, departure, return, like my own Brooklyn Odyssey model. And this is when someone, the protagonist, has been working as an intern and then gets a job as an editorial assistant at a parenting magazine, and he's about to leave the neighborhood, and so his friend suggests that for the last night we need to have a big strip club send-off. So this is Alex running into his friend Hank at the OTV, so I want to hand, Alex, hey, come here. I crossed the street and there was Hank in his usual spot staked outside OTB. Hank looked like a young W.C. Fields, the bulbous wino nose, scheming narrow eyes, and of course the cigar served as the perfect supplemental prop. He shook my hand and patted my shoulder. So how you doing, all right? Yeah, I'm good. He flicked a few crisp ashes from his cigar. I hear you're leaving us. Yeah, I'm out of here in a couple of weeks. Your father told me. Where you going? Not sure yet. Probably San Francisco. Hank's eyebrows shot up like a couple of scared kittens. San Francisco, where all the fags are. I think they've got a few straight people there. Hank laughed and said, all right, whatever you say, just don't drop the soap. San Francisco's a city, Hank, not a prison shower. He raised up his hand as if protesting innocent. All right, I'm just saying. And he clapped me on the back and said, come inside for a minute. I got to see the next race. After that, we'll go to Gus's. I want to talk to you. We went inside the OTB where it seemed the same men smoking the same cigarettes, screened by the same smoke cloud, staring at the same racing monitors, were there from my childhood. When I was a kid, at least once a week, my mother would send me to OTB to fetch my father, who was, as she put it, feeding all our money to the horses. I hated going there. This was my father's secret world, of which I had and wanted no part, and I'd always curse my mother internally for forcing my entry into that world. As soon as the men saw me walk in, someone would say something like, oh, here's your kid, Frankie, time to go home, or your boys come to collect you. My father never got upset, and half the time he would come with me after saying, we'll go right after this race. The other half of the time, he told me to go home and tell my mother I hadn't seen him there. That usually set off my mother's Tourette's rage of cursing and screaming at the heavens. Why, God? Tell me why I got a sick man for a husband. Why? God never answered, which is why I think she'd scream louder and louder, as if God were deaf or spoke a foreign language. My father didn't go to OTB anymore, at least not this one, because his girlfriend Lucy, who had worked at a number of OTBs over a 15-year span, considered the regulars low-life degenerates, and didn't want my father to be like them. So he told her he'd quit gambling and instead went to OTBs in other neighborhoods. The race was about to begin and all the men glued their eyes to the monitors. Hank stood next to his father, Henry, a long-standing regular. Once the race started, the men started screaming at the monitors and twisting their bodies and waving their arms like cheerleaders under attack by a swarm of bees. About a minute later, the commotion died down, and some men cursed loudly, and some men cursed under their breath, and some men kept quiet, but you could see disappointment screwing up their faces. A few men rejoiced. Hank hit me on the arm with his rolled-up racing form and said, come on. I started to follow him, then Henry saw me and said, hey, Alex, how's it going? Everything's good, Henry. Where's your old man at these days? I don't know. I don't see him much. Hank cut in. He can't come here because of the red devil. That's what Hank and a few of the other regulars called Lucy, because of her red hair and what they considered a bitchy disposition. Wait, before you go, Henry said, you ready for the fact of the day? Henry was an aficionado of Brooklyn history, with his main area of expertise the Brooklyn Dodgers. Every time Henry saw me, he hit me with the fact of the day. What is it? I asked Henry. Did you know that in 1863, a guy by the name of Candy Cummings invented the curveball for Brooklyn? Then Henry raised his right hand in the air and said, and that's the truth. Henry always epilogued his facts by raising his right hand and saying, and that's the truth. I didn't know that, Henry. Remember that. Use it in your writing someday. I will, Henry. Thanks. Henry shook my hand and Hank said, all right, Pop, we got to go. Go ahead, go. Who's stopping you? We walked across the street to Gus's, the donut shop where all the gamblers took their breaks to eat or drink coffee. We sat at the counter. You want a coffee? Hank asked. Sure. Light and sweet, all right? Yeah, fine. Hey, Gina! Hank shouted to the waitress who was refilling an old man's coffee at the other end of the counter. Just a minute, Hank. You see I'm doing something here? 5 seconds later, Gina came over. She was in her 30s and the oldest of Gus's 3 daughters, all of whom worked at the shop. Her makeup, as if working opposite, exaggerated the puffiness and tired look of her eyes, and her platinum hair, black bleeding through, was a mess of curls. What can I get for you, hun? 2 coffees, light and sweet. Light and sweet all right for you? Yeah, I reminded Hank. Is that all? Gina asked. Hank leaned in and surveyed the donuts and pastries in the metal bins. He pointed. Get one of those Danishes. Gina reached into the bin, wax paper in hand. This one? No, the one next to it. This one? Yeah. Gina pinched the Danish between the wax paper, grabbed a small plate, and set the Danish on the plate in front of Hank. Coffees will be right up, guys. Once Gina walked away, Hank nudged my arm. She's got a pair, no? What? What? Tits. Some pair of tits. I waited for Gina to face my direction and snuck a look. Her white shirt was unbuttoned, and I could see the breast swell straining against her powder-stained black t-shirt. Yeah, I guess. What are you guessing about, Hank snapped? I'm telling you, those are nice tits. Gina, our officially nice-titted waitress, came back with 2 cups of coffee and set them on the counter. There you go, guys. When she left, Hank said, in his high-volume version of a whisper, if you could fuck one of Gus's daughters, who would it be? I looked at Hank, the glaze in his narrowed eyes. It was like Hugh Hefner, a genie popped out of a magic lamp and was excited to make one of my Gus daughter fucking fantasies come true. I don't know, Hank. Listen, he said, and counted off each name one by one on his fingers. You got the youngest one, Angela. She's got the booming ass. There's the middle one, Rose, with the killer legs. And there's Gina and her tits. I saw 3 names with their respective prized body parts attached, floating before me, and knew that Hank wouldn't move on until I picked one of them. I guess Angela. Angela, huh? So you're taking a guess. Felt like I drafted a player who was now being second-guessed by our team's dubious owner. Hank sipped his coffee and considered my pick. Yeah, I can see that, he said. I'm going to have to go with Gina. He was quick to justify why. She's the oldest of the 3, which in a lot of ways is good, plus her legs ain't bad. She's got those tits you can lose yourself in. I imagined Hank falling and growing smaller and smaller as he disappeared into the deep valley, cleaving Gina's tits. He seemed happy. Hank dipped his Danish in his coffee and bit off the dripping, soggy part. Then, what did your father have to say? About what? About you going? He said I'm a goddamn idiot for leaving a good job to live like a gypsy. He's got a point, you know, which is you got a good job doing something you like and you're good at. I was an editorial assistant and writer for Families First, a parenting magazine in Manhattan. I'd gotten a job through an internship program. You keep at it, who knows, maybe one day you'll be running the whole magazine. I don't want to run the magazine. I'm just saying, you got a good job, you're getting paid to write. So Hank, did you ask me to talk about tits and the importance of employment? Hank gobbled the rest of his Danish. No, I wanted to tell you. We got to do something before you take off. Take you out somewhere, you know? All right. I thought Hank was going to ask me where I wanted to go, but instead said, I'm thinking we'll go to the saloon. By the saloon, Hank meant the Sin Saloon, a strip club located in the industrial dregs of Brooklyn, where he often hung out. I don't want to go to a fucking strip club, Hank. Listen to you, you're not even in San Francisco yet, and you're already talking like a fag. Yeah, Hank. The powers of the fags in San Francisco are so far-reaching, they've already taken me over. I stood up and pretended to be a gay zombie, arms, straightforward eyes, flaming voice, spooky, cock, I need cock. I put my arm around Hank's shoulder, which he quickly batted away. Fuck off me with that gay shit. His voice softened. No, listen, really, here's the plan. We round up a few guys, whoever you want to come, we go to the saloon, kick back, have a good time, and I'll take care of you. I got a check coming in a couple of days. Hank received a monthly disability check from the government. He had been a corrections officer at Rikers for 2 years, then he hurt his back at work and started collecting disability. Even though Hank's back was now healthy enough for him to work, his brother-in-law, George, who was a chiropractor, wrote medical notes for him, which basically functioned as get-out-of-work-free cards. Hank said he was going to ride the disability ship as long as he could because it allowed him more time for his 2 favorite things, going to OTB and watching sports.